Okay, so turn 2, and if you want to know what time of year it is, it's located just down here underneath the main screen on the board. It's July 1941. The 4 boxes next to it are the weather in the 4 zones. Russia is located primarily in the blue zone. This here, just running around our Luftwaffe unit, is the line that separates the blue, this side, from the green on the Königsberg side. And we have to decide whether or not to transfer points to Romania and Hungary. And I'm not going to do so on this turn. So let's just hit confirm. Now we have strategic movement, and I'm going to talk a little more about strategic movement. And I'm going to talk about it in connection with this German unit west of Warsaw. This one here. So the Germans have 24 production points, and they have 12 German units, 4 of which are panzers. Panzers take 2 production points to activate, infantry take 1. So the Germans need 16 production points to activate all of their units, assuming that they don't transfer any production points to Romania. If they do that, they will have 8 production points left. That means they won't have enough production points to do replacements on all 3 of their Luftwaffe units, because those take 3 production points each. And that means that one of those will go without a replacement. So, on each turn, you have to not move one of the German infantry. Or, if you supply the Romanians with a production point, you have to not move 2 of the German infantry, or not move 1 of the German panzers. Or you have to know that you won't actually be using your Luftwaffe unit, and you don't need the replacements. Though, frankly, that's very unlikely. And this is where strategic movement comes in. So, we click on the German unit. A strategic move, you get exactly 1 of them every turn, does not take any production points. It allows the unit to move an unlimited distance on the supply lines, as long as it does not enter or pass through an enemy zone of control, an enemy unit, or an enemy-held city. Now, this unit is a long way away from the front line. The only thing it could possibly attack would be this out-of-supply Soviet unit at the bottom, and that unit's dead anyway. Where we really need it is with Army Group North up here, where we've only actually got 3 units north of the Pripyat marshes, and that just doesn't cut it for an advance. So what we're going to do is use the strategic move to move it all the way out to this marsh here, putting it in a good position to help secure the line, and also in a good position to launch attacks next turn. Now, once a unit has been moved by strategic movement, clicking on it won't end the move. This is strategic movement doesn't end by clicking on the unit, unlike operational movement. You have to hit the confirm button up at the top here. Once you do, the unit is grayed out and it gets a little strategic move marker. The strategic move marker means that the unit can't activate again in the operations phase. It also cannot receive any replacements. So if you move a half strength unit this way, or if you move an aircraft this way, you won't be able to give it any replacements. Okay. So the Soviets won't be doing any strategic movement. And now we come to the Axis attack. So I'm going to begin my attacks with this Hungarian unit here against this Soviet unit here. So, the Soviet unit is on low supply, which is a -2. I'm isolated, which is a +2 for me. But we're attacking across a mountainous hexside into rough terrain, and the garrison unit is a reduced unit. So there's no advantage one way or the other. I did say if you fall below a +1 overall advantage, then there's a danger of an attack or attrition. Well, I don't actually care about the Hungarian unit, and I'd rather save the movement points of German units. I don't want them to spend their time killing surrounded and out of supply Russian units. However, we'll throw in Russian air support and Russian tanks. Now you'll notice, despite the fact that I've got Luftwaffe units in range, I haven't been offered the opportunity to commit a Luftwaffe unit to this. The reason for that is you cannot use German support elements to support Allied troops. This is an additional way in which the Allied troops are just really weak. They are, however, generally quite expendable, with one caveat. If you lose them on the defensive, then you lose a national will. But losing them on the attack doesn't lose you any national will. And if that Hungarian unit blows up, I'll just plug the line with the Romanian unit and carry on punching through. So I'm not at all worried. Sorry, turn that tank off. I did say I'm not using any tanks on defensive. So, no effect. We just do the attack again. Attacker stopped. So I wasn't really expecting the Hungarian unit to punch through, but it was a nice thought. It would have made things simpler had it done so. I'm going to throw the Romanian unit in now. Again, same principle. I'm just after kind of getting this blockage out of my way so that my German units can move more freely. Right. Unfortunately, the Romanian unit doesn't have enough movement to get there and launch an attack. We can see that because there's no red number over the actual Soviet unit. The best that the Romanian unit can do is to attack Cernauti, which it won't do a very good job of. So we're going to undo move. Okay, we're going to have to do this with our German unit. We'll give it an air support. And we are through. We've got defender disrupted and the unit's surrounded, so that's a retreat and a disruption. It can't retreat, so it's an additional disruption that destroys the unit. Now, what do we do here? So, if I move here and then attack the unit at Cernauti, the unit at Cernauti is just going to retreat to this space here. That doesn't do me any good. So what I'm going to do is cross the river here, and that will isolate the unit at Cernauti. Is Cernauti how you pronounce this? I have no idea how most of these Russian and Ukrainian towns are pronounced. It's always worth throwing in an attack if you've got the option, and we're at +2 here to the... We're not going to throw any air support in. It's not a very important attack. No effect. End this German move. Now, I'm going to use the Romanians for the next bit because it's not terribly important. We're going to move up to here. Okay, right. We can attack that unit with the Romanians, just not from that space. So undo the move from this space by the looks of things. If I had 2 production points available for the Romanians, because I'm only going to get 1 attack in here, what I would do is turn this into an assault and then throw in this unit for an additional +1. But I didn't transfer any points to the Romanians, so this is just going to have to be a mobile assault. We'll notice again, this is at an overall +0, right, which does run the risk of the Romanians taking an attack or attrition. But the honest answer is I don't really care enough about the Romanian units. And we got to defend a retreat. So that makes it easier to punch through that position. Now let's move up. What we're looking at is, can we surround and take out this unit here? Yes. Okay, so what rule did I screw up? Well, it's the supply source. That's the thing that I was getting wrong. I was looking at Bessarabia, and I was assuming that if I surrounded it and cut off that section from the rest of the country, that I would put all of those units out of supply, and all of my movement around there, the big arcing movement with the Panzer, the movements you'll see on the Russian turn, are all about, first of all, trying to do that, and then trying to get the Russians out of that mess, except that it's not a mess, because a Russian unit can trace its supply to any city in Russia. It doesn't need to be able to trace it back to the eastern edge of the board. This is actually an example of where unconditional surrender is a little bit unusual in war games terms, because in most war games, surrounding an area like that would cut off the supplies for the troops in the area. So that's why I'm speeding through those sections of the videos, but that's actually quite an important rule to remember. As the Soviet player is withdrawing, they can draw supply from any city, so even if they get surrounded in a pocket, they'll be fine. And cities themselves can't be simply starved into submission. The supply system is quite generous in that respect. The same is not true for the Germans. The German units need to trace their supply all the way back to a city in Germany. So it's much easier to cut off the supply of German forces. And by the way, Romanian units have to trace their supply back, and so do the Hungarian units. So anyway, that's the rule that I screwed up, and that's why as you watch the bits that don't really have any audio over of me moving units, the movements won't really make any sense. Now we move to the top, and we have 4 units we can activate. The Soviets are much further back here. It's going to be very hard to do any serious harm to them right from here. They are also in range of their air support, and largely beyond the range of German air support. In a situation like this, what you're looking for is a way to open a hole in the line. And that's actually quite difficult if the enemy are more than sort of 2 hexes away and their zones of control interlock, especially if they've adopted positions where it costs additional movement points to attack them, which all 4 of these units are. So this is the easiest place to do it. If we get a unit into here and then strike east, that will force this unit to fall back to here, which doesn't actually open a hole, but it does mean that a unit can get in here and pin the unit in Riga. Alternative would be to strike down here, but that unit's just going to fall back into another piece of rough terrain, which if you hit this unit, it's going to keep the line but just fall back to the other side of a river. If you hit the Riga unit head on, right, then you're attacking across a river and into a town, and you're not really advancing or threatening to cut anything else off. So I think it has to be the 13th Soviet here. By the way, I'm not really sure what these what the units represent. I think some sort of equivalent to a corps, perhaps Soviet armies, German corps. I'm not really clear. Now, you'll notice that the German unit has 7 movement points remaining. And this means that it's only going to get 1 attack into the town. If it doesn't shift that Soviet unit, that's the end of its activation. So let's undo that move a second. That doesn't look like a lot of fun. So what we will do is advance our fighters to here, which means we'll have air support going in. Now, we could also turn this into an assault. We could throw the 4th Panzer in and make it an assault. Then we could bring the 3rd Panzer up, make that an assaulting unit as well. And when an armoured unit supports an assault, it adds +2 to the assault. So that would give us a very large value, which means we'd be almost certain to get across the river. So we'd be attacking across a river and into a town, but we'd be doing it with Panzer in fair weather, who's German, with another Panzer supporting. So we'd be at +4, we'd have air support, which would put us at +6, but the Soviet unit would have a +2. Here is a good rule of thumb to remember. At a +1 overall advantage, you are in no danger of getting an attack or attrition. If you get to a +3, then you have a better than 50% chance of making the other side retreat. If you get to a +4, you will not get an attacker stopped result, which means that your unit is going to continue to be able to make mobile attacks. If you get to +6, then you will have at least an 11 in 12 chance of forcing a retreat. So those are kind of 4 points to be worth remembering. Okay, so we do have a problem. And I'll try and explain this problem as clearly as possible. Because it's a problem that the Germans run into repeatedly in this scenario, and it's one that the Russians should actively encourage. Even including allies, we only have 16 units on the German side. At its narrowest point, the front is 14, 15 hexes wide, so you end up with situations like this. If we put 4th Panzer into this Latvia square here, and 3rd Panzer into hex 2141 here, and the 2 of them launch a combined assault. Succeed or fail, the Panzers are now concentrated here. If they succeed, the 16th German infantry would be able to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and get round and pin the Riga unit. And the 18th would then be able to come up and complete that pin. However, if we did that, there would then be a 3 hex hole between the 2nd and the 4th. And the Soviets could walk straight through, cut off our supplies, force us to double back on ourselves, right? Cause total chaos in our real lines. I mean, they'd literally be able to take Warsaw. Oh no, they don't quite have enough movement to take Warsaw, but it would still be embarrassing. So if we do that, and if we send the 16th round to pin the unit at Riga and block this hole with the 18th, then the unit at Riga can just walk out to the south. It's not actually surrounded. So looking at this is a lack of foresight on my part. Right? The second here is not doing a very useful job because this is the best attack point for the panzers and it's duplicating their work. The second would have been better off being deployed down here, just below Vilnius. We're actually going to open a hole by our attempted action. So we cannot do the attack in the way I would like to do the attack. So what we're going to do instead is try and attack this unit down at the bottom, force our way round this way, which allows us to keep contact with units in the marshes. Or that everything is where it should be, and we have so this air unit here has only one sortie, so it makes sense for this air unit here to move. Where to? Things will go a lot faster if we have some air support down here, so let's bring it to the position of 2nd Panzer. Okay. And remember, I'm willing to go up to 3 sorties, so that always leaves us the possibility of a defensive sortie for that unit. Now, you'll notice I have not moved this Luftwaffe unit here. That's partly because I think it'll be easier to move it next turn. And I don't want to move it more often than I have to. So I've left myself 9 production points, which will allow me to recover all of those sorties. So now I pass, confirm, supply all unlimited, and there we go. It's now the Soviet turn. And let's take a look at that panzer. So this is why we hold on to the tank units. Because what we're looking at is, do the Germans create a situation that would allow us to make a counterattack? It's possible to get units in here to the northwest and here to the southeast. If we do that, the Panzer has no retreats. Actually, we don't even need to get it on the southeast. The east will do. The Panzer has no retreats. Its main retreat is being blocked by its own unit. So the no retreat is the critical thing for the Soviets. If you can find a position where a German unit cannot retreat, then you have a realistic chance of attacking the German unit, because any retreat result will turn into a destroy. Now, ideally, you'd also want to isolate the unit, because that gives you a +2. Here's the problem. These little Soviet infantry units don't fight with a combat modifier. German panzers fight with a +4. We need to get this up to at least a +1 if we're doing multiple mobile attacks. Ideally somewhere around +3 to +5. And we need to be able to do it multiple times because otherwise we're not going to get 2 retreats, which is what we need to destroy the Panzer. 1 retreat is inconvenient for the German because it will flip the Panzer unit to its depleted side. And the Germans will spend a point unflipping it. But all that's actually going to cost them is repairing a few sorties on their aircraft. And remember, this German unit can get +2 from an aircraft, so it can get up to +6 here. So can we get to +7 with the Soviet units? Well, the unit from Riga could come in to the northwest. The unit could come into the east. We could launch an assault with 3 units combined. Those 3 units could be assigned to tank markers, which means that they would receive +2 for the primary unit being a tank, +2 for a support from a tank and assault, and +1 from an infantry in an assault, which would get them up to +5. We could fly in an aircraft from another location and then launch an airstrike, which would get us up to +7. That would get us 1 point above the German panzers with air support. So we'd have something like a 1 in 3 chance of causing a depletion. We wouldn't be able to get a second attack in. This really isn't a workable counterattack. But that's exactly what you should be looking for, is counterattack opportunities with the Soviet forces. What we've done is create 3 separate assaults. We're going to lead off from this unit here. We are going to add in 2 additional units, confirm attack. So we'll throw both the tanks in. The Germans will throw in their local air support. And unfortunately we get no effect. So I might have... No, we rolled a 1. So I almost certainly didn't cost us anything by not bringing up the Soviet air support. So now we have this concentration units around Odessa. They're in trouble, right? But they're not in a lot of trouble. Well, no more trouble than Soviet units usually are in this situation. So we pass. Oh, cancel. No, we didn't actually... We're not going to move our units in the north. Yeah, we're going to have to move this unit at Riga because the line's been broken through here. So we need to re-establish the line further back. And I said I was running the computer like an AI, and really I ought to send the unit to Tallinn to recreate a line between Veliki and Tallinn. But that's a rubbish position to recreate a line at. So I'm going to do a sensible human thing. I'm going to move this unit back here, where it is protected by the lake. I'm going to move this unit back to here, where it is protected by the lake. And I'm going to move this unit to this side of the river, where it now secures the whole line. Then I'm going to pass everybody should be in supply, which they are. Now, here's something. Suddenly, the Soviets have 7 infantry available. What's going on here? Well, every time a unit is killed, destroyed, it goes on to the next turn of the turn track. And then you get to rebuild it at the end of the next turn, which it usually comes back at reduced strength, but there's a special rule for these Soviets that they come back at full strength, which means that you will then get to repair it at the end of the turn after that. So the upshot is that when you destroy a unit, the unit is actually only out of action for 2 to 3 turns, and then it's back in full. So we'll stick one of them into Kiev. Realistically here, we cannot properly re-establish supplies. We have to stick it into Sevastopol. Because you don't leave the fortresses empty. And one here. Now, you'll notice there's some big open gaps, but the Germans do have to deal with this stuff here, so not too concerned about that. Get a unit into Smolensk. Now, worth noting, there's effectively a Russian defensive line established by these towns: Kharkov, Kursk, Orel, Bryansk, Smolensk, Veliki. They allow you to basically create a line out of nowhere. So what we're going to do is we're going to focus on which ones are the Germans posing the greatest threat to. I don't think realistically they're getting to Bryansk. But all this open terrain down here is quite dangerous. They might get to Kharkov or Kursk. So at the very least, they're almost certainly going to destroy these units at the bottom. So we're going to need to re-establish a line with some rapidity. Right. So that was the end of July, and we're on to... That was the end of July, and we're on to the beginning of August, and back to the German turn.